There's a certain silence that falls over a house when something unspoken breaks. Not the slam of a door or the crash of a plate. Just this hollow, humming stillness, like even the air is holding its breath. That's what I walked into that night. The kids were asleep, dog curled by the fireplace. And Lauren? She was in our bedroom, legs folded under her like she didn't have a storm brewing just inches away. She didn't even notice me walk in at first, too busy texting on a phone I didn't recognize. Not her usual one. No floral case. No pop socket. Just sleek, black, and almost new. A burner phone. And that's where it started. I didn't even mean to see it. I bent to untie my boots, and when I looked up, there it was, screen lit in her hand. One message from Mason. Soon she'll be your problem, not mine. I've cleared the path. Love you. And then her reply. Daniel still thinks he has rights. He'll fold the second I push. I'll walk away with everything. I didn't say anything right away. Just stood there like I was watching a stranger in my house. My wife, Lauren, the woman who used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder while we planned names for kids we hadn't even conceived yet. Now plotting with a man she called Your Honor in court and lover in text. When she finally looked up and saw me staring, she didn't flinch. Not even a flicker of guilt. You going through my things now? She said, not bothering to hide the phone. I didn't need to. I replied, my voice like gravel. You left it wide open. She smiled then. Not the warm kind. This was the kind of smile you give someone when they've already lost and just haven't figured it out yet. Fine, she said, slipping the phone into her purse. Yes, Mason and I are together. He's leaving his wife. We're making a life. My jaw tightened. I said nothing. She mistook that for weakness. I was going to wait, she added, brushing a speck of lint off her dress like it offended her. But since you're already snooping, let me be clear. You file for divorce. I take everything. The house, the kids, your pension. You'll be paying me while I'm in bed with someone better. I stared at her. Measured. Quiet. She leaned against the doorframe now, arms crossed, confident. You think you can outlawyer a sitting judge? She added. We'll bury you in motions. You'll drown in debt before you even get a hearing. She took a step closer, her voice dropping like she thought we were negotiating. Or, you can stay in your lane. Keep your job. See the kids on holidays. And let me move on. And that's when I knew. She didn't expect a fight. She expected a whimper. A quiet little signature on a piece of paper, and me fading into a rented apartment and supervised visitation. But she forgot one thing. I build things for a living. I solve problems most people don't see coming. And I don't swing wildly. I measure. I plan. I execute. So I nodded. Said nothing. Walked past her like I'd accepted it. Like a man retreating. But I wasn't retreating. I was calculating. She thought this was the end. But it was only the beginning. And Mason? He had no idea that the man he just threatened was about to become his worst problem. There's something about betrayal that sharpens your senses. The way the floor creaks under her heels when she comes home at 2 a.m. reeking of gin and Mason's cologne. The fake laughter that gets louder when she knows the kids are listening. The way she calls me roommate, now, or worse, mediocre. Lauren didn't even bother to pretend anymore. That first confrontation, it only emboldened her. She thought she had me caged and declawed. You missed a spot, she'd sneer while I was doing dishes. Oh wait, you always miss something. Even in bed. She said it right in front of Emma, our oldest. 12 years old, and already learning what contempt looks like in a marriage. The late nights became routine. The lies more insulting than clever. Client dinner, she'd say, while adjusting earrings she hadn't worn in 5 years. The kids knew. They didn't say it, but you can see it in their eyes. Kids are sharper than we give them credit for. She didn't notice that I stopped reacting. That her insults landed in silence. That my eyes weren't tired. They were watching. And when she thought I wasn't looking, she started siphoning money. Little transfers here and there, always just under the reporting threshold. I checked our joint account one night and saw a $2,900 consulting fee sent to a name I didn't recognize. A day later, another $1,200 for office furniture we never received. That's when I bought the recorder. Small, discreet, voice-activated. I planted it in the kitchen, our war room. Then in her car. Then, later, in the hallway outside the bedroom. I didn't want drama. I wanted proof. By the end of the month, I had hours of audio. Her bragging to her sister about how Mason would nuke Daniel's life from orbit. About how I was too pathetic to even fight back. about how she'd already won. That's when I made 2 calls. First, to a guy named Rafi, private investigator. Found him through a buddy who handled corporate security for a Fortune 500 firm. Discreet, lethal, expensive, my friend warned. You sure? Oh, I'm sure, I said. Second call was to Mary and Ing, divorce attorney. Ivy League brain with a predator's instinct. She didn't coddle. She interrogated. I liked her immediately. Don't come to me unless you're willing to go for the throat, she said. I don't want her throat, I replied. I want her blind, cornered, and begging. She smiled. That can be arranged. The 3 of us met in a hotel conference room 2 weeks later. Rafi laid out a folder as thick as a Bible. She's funneling cash into 2 shell accounts, he said. One under her maiden name, one under a trust controlled by someone named Mason R. Welling. Ing arched an eyebrow. Judge Welling. Yep, I said. Lauren's silver-haired savior. Well, she just stepped in it, Ing said, flipping through the paperwork. Judges don't get to moonlight as lovers and co-conspirators in asset fraud. Not when it's recorded. And definitely not when there are kids involved. Publicly, though, I kept the mask on. The picture of passive defeat. I nodded when she barked at me. Laughed when she mocked my cooking. Even let her toss out my college sweatshirt like she was cleansing the house of my scent. Let her win every little battle. So she wouldn't see the war. Then, one night, 3 months into the charade, I walked in after work, just as the sun was dipping low across the street. The house was quiet. I heard clinking in the dining room. There they were. Lauren at the head of the table, sipping wine, swirling it like she was on vacation. And Mason, seated in my chair, carving into the roast I had seasoned and set out for the kids. He looked up, smug as ever. Daniel, he said, as if greeting a waiter. Hope you don't mind. Lauren said it was fine. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, then at her. Then I smiled. Not the warm kind. The knowing kind. Because that roast he was eating? It was the last supper of a man who hadn't realized he'd stepped into a trap. And I was done playing dead. They didn't waste time. The paperwork came 3 days after Mason's little dinner stunt. A temporary custody order, signed off suspiciously fast. Full physical custody to Lauren. Limited visitation for me. Supervised. Like I was some unhinged stranger who had wandered in off the street and demanded to see kids he didn't know. Attached to that was a motion to freeze assets. Joint accounts. Retirement. The house. Suddenly, the roof I built over their heads was legally hers, and I wasn't even allowed on the porch. Then came the real knife, a restraining order. Lauren claimed I'd threatened her, that I'd raised my voice, that I'd made her feel unsafe. Not once. Not ever. But accusations don't have to be true. They just have to be filed. I read the documents in my car, parked in a grocery store lot. The irony wasn't lost on me. Outside, families were picking out frozen pizzas and school snacks while mine was being picked apart in court filings. I was out of the house. My access to the kids? A handful of supervised hours in a clinical room with a clipboard holding observer and a 2-way mirror. My bank cards? Declined. My job? Already side-eyeing me, rumors spreading like motor oil on concrete. All part of the plan. They were bleeding me slow, trying to break me down into a man too tired, too broke, and too hopeless to fight back. But that's the thing about slow bleeds. If you know how to tourniquet, you don't die. You just get quiet. So I got quiet. And while they thought I was crumbling, I was digging. Turns out Mason was not just morally compromised, he was legally radioactive. Judges aren't supposed to involve themselves in cases where they have a personal interest, especially not when they're sleeping with one of the parties. Through some creative searching and help from Rafi, my private investigator, I got into the metadata of Lauren's burner phone backups. She thought she wiped them. She didn't. In one file, messages from Mason's private number. Not just romantic fluff. Strategy. Legal advice. Wording suggestions for her affidavits. Specific tips on which judge to file the motion with for faster results. And then came the jackpot, an audio file. Timestamped. Clear. No ambiguity. Lauren's voice. We get custody first. Then we freeze his assets. Once he's broke and desperate, we hit him with the abuse claim. He won't fight back. Mason's voice. You'll bleed him dry. Once he's hollowed out, I'll make sure it ends clean. I played that clip over and over, my finger hovering above the pause button like I was savoring the impact. Because that wasn't just cruel. That was collusion. Judicial misconduct. Potential disbarment. And the best part? The call wasn't even made in a private room. It was from Lauren's car, Bluetooth connected and recorded automatically by the mic I had installed in the rearview. Insurance, I called it. By the end of the week, I had a dossier thicker than a phone book. Audio, text chains, financial records, screenshots, GPS logs. My attorney, looked through it with a level of calm usually reserved for surgeons about to operate on a tumor. This, she said, flipping to a transcript, isn't just evidence. This is career-ending. Good, I replied. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to bury them. Careful, she said. Rage makes mistakes. I'm not angry, I told her. I'm documenting. Lauren and Mason thought the storm had passed. They didn't know I was the storm. They say the best defense is a good offense. I'd argue the best offense is one nobody sees coming until it's already underneath their feet, wired and counting down. While Lauren and Mason were busy posturing in court, I was in a dusty notary's office 2 states over, signing the final documents that quietly handed over 100% of my company's shares to a holding corporation. On paper, it belonged to Thomas Pritchard, my oldest friend and former college roommate. In reality, Thomas owed me more favors than he could count. My business, Andrews Solutions, LLC, was now legally owned by Pritchard Holdings, a Wyoming-based shell company with no direct ties to me. The revenue? Still flowing, clean, and regular. But the legal trail? Muddy and indirect. Ing set it up like a ghost net, untouchable unless you knew exactly where to cut. Meanwhile, Lauren was getting sloppy. One night, I borrowed a trick from my IT guy and remotely accessed the office server backups from the company she still technically co-managed. Buried deep in the expense reports was a recurring monthly payment for $1,700 to Pinnacle Consulting, an entity that didn't even have a website until a month after Lauren's affair began. Its registered agent? Curtis Langdon, Lauren's cousin. The one with a history of bankruptcy and a failed crypto startup that had been revolutionizing local finance, according to a Facebook post written in Comic Sans. I dug deeper. No actual services rendered. No invoices with deliverables. Just vague strategy outlines and brand audits with recycled language that looked suspiciously like it was pulled from a free template site. So I started building my file. Again, this one wasn't about betrayal. This was embezzlement, wire fraud, misappropriation, breach of fiduciary duty. The beauty of it was, I didn't need to accuse. I just needed to show. Show the payments. Show the dates. Show the connection. And when the IRS saw it, oh, they'd be delighted to join the party. Ing was already preparing a sealed affidavit. We'll hit them civilly, then criminally, she said. You want scorched earth, Daniel? This is how we salt it. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I still had a card left. One evening, I sat in the back booth of a quiet diner 3 counties away. Had a burner laptop, a secure connection, and a clean USB stick with everything Mason never wanted anyone to hear. The call recordings. The texts. The timeline of his unethical involvement in a live divorce case. With a few careful keystrokes, I packaged it all into a neat file labeled Welling_JRB_complaint_anonymous.pdf. Judicial Review Board. One of the few organizations in the country that could dismantle a judge's life with the same ruthlessness Mason was so proud of. I didn't sign it. I didn't include a return address. But I made sure they had no doubts it was real. 34 pages. Clear chain of custody. Legally admissible. I hit send. No fireworks. No music. Just the quiet hum of the laptop and the feeling of the first domino tipping forward. Mason didn't know it yet. But his gavel was already falling. It started with a whisper, just a short article on page 6 of the Herald Tribune. State judge under review for alleged conflict of interest in ongoing divorce case. No names. Not yet. Just the facts. A sitting family court judge accused of inappropriate involvement with a litigant. Rumors of sealed evidence. An anonymous complaint backed by verified recordings. By Tuesday, it hit the local news. By Friday, it was on cable. They didn't say Lauren's name, but they didn't have to. The internet did what it always does, dug, speculated, connected dots. Her Instagram, once full of clout-chasing virtue posts and rooftop brunches, was suddenly flooded with comments. Homewrecker. Sleeping your way through the bench? Guess ethics don't matter when you're after a lake house and a Rolex. Within 72 hours, Meridian Advertising, her precious PR firm, the one she had clawed her way into, released a quiet, 6-sentence statement. We do not condone actions that compromise our values or client trust. Effective immediately, Lauren Welling, née Banks, is no longer affiliated with Meridian Advertising. She was out. Just like that. Her standing, her friends, her followers, gone or turning fast. It was like watching a social landslide. The kind that starts slow and then swallows everything. But the real punch came on Monday. Family court, 9 a.m. My attorney, Mary and Ing, filed a motion to review the custody agreement. With the judicial ethics complaint in play, and Mason's involvement now under active investigation, the court had no choice but to reconsider. Lauren looked polished, of course. Always the actress. Subdued makeup. Conservative blazer. But her eyes? They were twitching. That tell she had when things weren't going according to plan. When the judge granted me temporary joint custody, restoring my right to see the kids, to pick them up from school, to live like their father again, she barely blinked. But her knuckles went white on the table. She didn't speak a word until we were in the parking lot. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You think this gets you back to square one?" I didn't reply. I didn't have to. That night, I made dinner for Emma and Josh for the first time in months. Pasta, garlic bread, the works. They smiled again. The house felt like a home again. Lauren showed up late. Uninvited. Said she just wanted to talk. She wore that silk blouse I used to compliment back when compliments meant something. Poured herself a glass of red like she still lived there. "You remember this wine?" she said softly, stepping close, her voice laced with nostalgia. "We drank it on our 10th anniversary. You called it velvet in a bottle." She placed her hand on my chest. "I miss you, Daniel." I looked her in the eyes. "I don't," I said, and stepped back. That's when it snapped. She hurled the wine glass across the kitchen. It shattered near the wall, just feet from where the kids sat at the dining table, frozen. "Mom!" Emma shrieked. Josh flinched. The silence after the crash was worse than the sound itself. I didn't yell, didn't move. I just looked at her, cold, flat, and said, "You need to leave. Now." She tried to say something, to pivot, to blame, to spin, but the mask was off. And the only thing left behind it was rage. She stormed out with her heels clicking like gunshots on tile. I cleaned up the shards, tucked the kids into bed, and sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, not wine. Because this wasn't a celebration. It was a warning. Lauren wasn't done lashing out. But now, neither was I. The beautiful thing about documentation is it doesn't shout. It waits, patiently, until the exact moment it becomes nuclear. 2 weeks after Lauren lost her PR job, I sent an anonymous envelope to a journalist I'd been quietly following for months. Business ethics beat. Real bloodhound type. Inside was a single sheet, an internal memo from Meridian Advertising, stamped and dated, directing a team to exploit non-public strategic insights from a government procurement official. Lauren's name was at the bottom. CC'd. Forwarded. Approved. Less than a week later, the article dropped. PR firm implicated in possible insider contract scandal. Former exec named in leak. It didn't even need to say more. The SEC came knocking like clockwork. So did the state's Department of General Services. Suddenly, Lauren wasn't just a scorned ex. She was potential federal bait. But I wasn't finished. Publicly, I played the role of the lonely, aging ex-husband who maybe, just maybe, still had a soft spot for the woman who torched his life. I called her. I texted. I made small talk at kid pickups. I let my voice crack just enough to seem unsure. She took the bait like it was laced in honey. "I knew you'd come around," she whispered over coffee one afternoon. "We were always meant to be a power couple, Daniel. We just got sidetracked." She thought the winds were changing back in her favor. That maybe, if she purred enough, I'd forget how she tried to erase me. That's when she got reckless again. Started talking. "I knew Mason would find those prenup holes," she said one night, swirling wine at her new condo, where she'd invited me just to talk. The way he read that thing. He knew exactly what clauses would fold under pressure. That's the difference between your cheap lawyer and real legal power. That condo? It had hidden microphones. Every room. Rafi made sure of it. I smiled and played along. "Guess I got lucky marrying such a brilliant woman." "You did," she said. "And you'll do even better keeping me close again. Trust me, this second time around, I'd be in charge of the money." Back at my place, Ing and I sifted through the audio, line by line, statement by statement. Each one, a nail in the coffin of her credibility in Mason's career. Ing tapped the prenup, highlighting a clause Lauren had mentioned. "She's right," Ing said. "That loophole? It's obscure. No civilian would spot it. But Mason did. That's judicial misuse of insider knowledge. That's real jail time." I nodded. Let's bury them in their own brilliance. Then came the hearing. Just a routine custody and financial review, or so she thought. She arrived polished, heels like stilettos on marble. Mason, notably absent, suspended pending review. But she still had that smug little smile. Until I pulled out the envelope. Your Honor, Ing said calmly, we have new evidence relevant to the division of assets in custody. Lauren frowned. What evidence? Ing didn't even flinch. Audio recordings, sworn transcripts, and a sealed supplement outlining coordinated actions between the defendant and a sitting judge, including manipulation of marital financial structures and targeted exploitation of prenup clauses. The judge's expression changed instantly. Lauren's did too. She stood up, too fast. That's not possible. That recording, how did you? Please sit, Ms. Banks, the judge said. I didn't look at her. I just exhaled. Because that's the moment her face cracked, the smug mask slipping into panic. She finally realized. I hadn't been reacting. I'd been recording. Family court isn't built for fireworks. The walls are beige. The chairs hard. The lighting harsh in that cold, fluorescent way that makes even honest people look guilty. But truth has a way of cracking through the dullest settings, and on that Tuesday morning, it didn't just crack, it shattered. Ing filed the motion for full custody 3 days after the last hearing. The recordings, the financial tampering, the collusion with Mason, all of it had laid the foundation. Now came the roof, parental unfitness. We weren't claiming she was evil, just incapable. And we had the receipts, witness lists, testimonies, sworn statements, the school counselor, a neighbor who'd seen Lauren drunk and yelling at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, even our daughter Emma's swim coach, who described Lauren showing up glassy-eyed and 40 minutes late to every meet. Ing laid it out slowly, calmly, like a surgeon removing rot. Then she turned to the gallery. We'd like to call Emma Andrews to the stand. Lauren jolted. Absolutely not, she snapped. The judge raised a hand. She's 13. Old enough, given the circumstances. Overruled. Emma walked in, clutching a little charm bracelet I gave her years ago. Sat down. Looked at the judge with more composure than half the adults in the room. Do you feel safe with both parents? He asked gently. Emma paused. Swallowed. With Dad? Yes. Always. And with your mother? A beat. Then, softly, like she didn't want to say it but had to. Mommy only smiles when Daddy cries. The silence that followed was the kind that settles into your bones. Lauren stood up like someone had yanked a string in her back. This is a setup, she shrieked. He coached her. He's been turning them against me. This judge, this whole court is biased. The bailiff moved, but she wasn't done. You can't do this. I'm their mother. I'm their mother. She pointed a trembling, furious finger at me. You think this makes you a hero? You think they'll forget what you really are? I don't want them to forget, I said quietly. I want them to remember everything, so they never end up in a relationship like ours. That's when the judge banged the gavel. Twice. Ms. Banks, you are out of order. Bailiff, please escort her from the courtroom. The kids watched, eyes wide but dry, as Lauren was led out, heels clicking furiously on tile like gunshots in retreat. When the doors closed, the judge turned to me. Mr. Andrews, until final review, this court grants you temporary full custody of both minors. He didn't smile. Judges don't. But Ing did. And in the back row, Rafi gave me a slow, respectful nod. But it wasn't just about winning custody. Not anymore. Because while Lauren was unraveling in a courtroom, Mason Welling was unraveling on the front page. Judge Welling suspended amid ethics scandal, romantic ties to litigant confirmed. There was a picture, Mason stepping out of his courthouse office, face pale, surrounded by cameras and a sea of microphones. I watched the coverage from the hallway outside the courtroom. Sound off. Just his face. Mouth tight. Eyes squinting. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look powerless. No robe. No bench. Just another man who thought he could ruin someone's life and forgot what happens when that someone fights back with silence, patience, and proof. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a form filed in triplicate and notarized in silence. Sometimes it's a ledger, a line of debt, a business acquisition made by a name no one recognizes, at least not yet. While Lauren was unraveling in the courts and the media, I was making moves she couldn't see. It started with a little push. A quiet tip from Ing's office to the State Financial Oversight Board. Irregularities in contracts, mismatched invoices, and excessive consulting fees paid to a firm with no staff, no office, and no legal footing. That firm? Pinnacle Consulting. owned by her cousin Curtis. The same Curtis who thought he was invisible behind 3 shell LLCs and a Gmail invoice template. But paper trails don't lie. The audit letters landed like thunder. First came the email, then the certified notice, then the knock on the office door that makes employees start updating their resumes before lunch. I stayed anonymous, of course. Just another concerned party. But behind the scenes, I wasn't idle. Through Pritchard Holdings, the same company that now owned my firm, I began acquiring Lauren's company's defaulted vendor contracts. Quiet purchases. Legally clean. We'd offer to buy out unpaid invoices from her contractors at a reduced rate, and those contractors, already burned by her delays, were all too eager to sell. Which meant every time her company picked up the phone expecting another extension, they got my lawyer instead. By week 4, we owned nearly 40% of her company's outstanding obligations. I could have called in the dead all at once. But where's the art in that? No, this needed time, pressure, an illusion of hope. Then came the attempted escape. Lauren, sensing the walls closing in, tried to liquidate her accounts. Bank transfer from her primary to an offshore fund in the Caymans. Didn't work. Ing had quietly filed for preliminary financial injunctions, citing suspicious asset mobility related to an ongoing custody and fraud case. The moment she hit send on that wire transfer, it froze, then bounced, then triggered alerts. Within 48 hours, all of her accounts were locked down pending review. Personal, business, trust. Even her gym auto payment declined. I didn't hear from her directly after that, but I heard from Curtis. He reached out to Ing's office, offered a deal, immunity in exchange for full cooperation and evidence. Turns out betrayal runs in the family. He gave us everything. Emails, wire receipts, notes from strategy calls. Lauren's voice caught on audio saying, "We just need to make it look clean until Daniel runs out of fight. After that, I'll bankrupt the LLC and start fresh." Spoiler, Daniel didn't run out of fight. And the LLC wasn't going anywhere. On a cloudy Thursday afternoon, Lauren stood in the lobby of what was left of her company, clipboard in hand, yelling at a secretary about media control when a process server walked in. Slim guy, black folder, pressed shirt, Lauren Banks. She barely turned. "Yes, what is it?" He handed her a thick envelope. "You're being served. Plaintiff, Pritchard Holdings. Basis, fraud, breach of contract, and willful misrepresentation." She ripped it open like it was a mistake. It wasn't. I was sitting across the street, parked in my truck. Watch the color drain from her face. Watch the moment she realized the game had flipped, and she wasn't holding any of the pieces anymore. Courtrooms have a particular kind of echo. Not loud, just final. Like whatever's said inside those walls sticks to your ribs a little longer than it should. It was the final divorce hearing. No cameras, no crowd. Just the lawyers, the judge, and the wreckage of a marriage that once pretended to be love. Lauren was already seated when I walked in. But this wasn't the Lauren of designer shoes and boardroom struts. This was a version of her I'd never seen, shoulders hunched, hair tied back in a way that said court order, not confidence. Her makeup was smudged. Her jacket hung off her like a loan she hadn't earned. Mason was nowhere to be found. Disbarred? No, not yet. But suspended, disgraced, and under investigation by both the Judicial Review Board and the State Bar. Lauren was alone. Ing stood beside me as the judge began the final proceedings. "Mr. Andrews," he said, "your counsel has submitted an amended petition with reference to the prenuptial agreement. Is that correct?" I nodded, calmly opened the folder in front of me. "Yes, Your Honor. Page 7, subsection C, fidelity clause." I slid a copy across the bench. The clause was simple. If either party was found to have committed adultery during the course of the marriage, their right to spousal support and claim to marital assets was forfeited. Lauren had signed it, initialed it, and, thanks to Ing's exhibit list, had now been proven to have violated it. Text messages, voicemails, hotel receipts, audio, Mason's own arrogant words, recorded and transcribed. Lauren shifted in her chair, eyes darting like a trapped animal looking for a fire escape. "This is character assassination," she snapped. I was coerced. He knew about Mason. He baited me. The judge didn't even blink. "Ms. Banks, you were not coerced. You were recorded, willingly and knowingly, conspiring with a sitting judge while actively engaging in extramarital conduct and financial fraud. The court does not find you credible." Her jaw twitched. Ing stood. "Your Honor, In light of the infidelity clause and ongoing criminal investigations, we respectfully request the following. Full legal and physical custody to Mr. Andrews. No spousal maintenance. No alimony. Denial of all marital asset claims per the prenup. The judge nodded. So ordered. Bang of the gavel. Just like that, it was over. Lauren didn't take it well. You think this makes you a man? She hissed. You think walking out of here with a stack of paper and some smug silence means you won? I didn't answer. I gave you the best years of my life, she shouted, her voice cracking. I gave you kids. I gave you me. She rose to her feet, tears streaking her face, mascara bleeding like ink on a contract gone bad. You think they'll love you after this? You think they won't know who you really are? I just stood there, stone-faced. No smile, no gloat, no words. Because some victories don't require fireworks. Just truth, delivered cold. The bailiff stepped toward her, but the judge raised a hand. Let her speak. She'll run out of venom eventually. She did. By the time the courtroom emptied, her voice had dwindled to hoarse threats. Echoes in an empty hall. I walked out without looking back. Didn't need to. Everything worth saving had already walked out ahead of me. My kids, my dignity, and my freedom. Viewers, this is the end of the story. We would be very grateful for your likes, comments, subscriptions, and sharing of our stories. See you next time.